Today I'm going to show you one of the most exciting developments that I have seen when it comes to off-grid camping. It is a off-grid power system that enables you in a large fifth wheel like this to go off-grid and stay out indefinitely at literally half the cost that you would with a traditional Victron system. For those of you who don't know our journey, on our first RV we had a 44-foot toy hauler and we had a $14,000 Victron setup with 800 amp hours of lithium batteries, 1,550 watts of solar on the roof, and a Victron Multi Plus system that we had to have professionally installed, and it cost us around $14,000. What I'm going to show you today, I actually installed all of it myself, and it only cost all in $7,500. It's called the Bluetti RV5, and I'm going to show it to you right now. Okay guys, here we are inside our main storage compartment. That's where I decided to mount this. Now, so what the RV5 is, it's four main components. So you've got the RV5 system. Now, back behind here, I have two large 48-volt batteries. Back behind here, I have what's called an E-panel, which is basically kind of a breaker box and a fuse box. And then here, we have the E-pad, which is kind of like an iPad, for lack of a better word. Now, I haven't even installed this. This has a long enough cable to where we can go install it on the wall of our RV. I just haven't gotten to that yet, frankly, because we have just installed this. So the way that this works, what makes this so different compared to the other systems that are out there is this is a true system, meaning that this has the inverter, the solar charge controller, and everything that you need in one box. Say you're watching this and you don't really understand how all this stuff works. So I'm just going to kind of, frankly, dumb it down for you a little bit so you understand what's happening here. Okay, so we've got solar power coming down from the roof. I have 1,600 watts of solar panels on the roof that I installed myself. They come down here and they have to come into this system to have that energy stored. So the solar charge controller, that's the job of the solar charge controller. It stores the energy into the batteries. Now, the batteries are DC power. You need to have that DC power inverted into AC power to be able to use it for things like your TV, your microwave, air conditioners, things that use AC power. Okay, so that's pretty much the job of all these things. That any system like this, that's how it works. The Victron systems, the most well-known systems out there, all the components for those are sold separately, and they're pretty technically difficult to install. We actually paid $5,000 to have installers install them for us, and so Bluetti saw that as an opportunity to make something that was a heck of a lot easier to install. So this is made to where pretty much if you're a little bit handy, you can do it yourself. And trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open the lid here and show you what's behind door number one. And these are the batteries. Now you're just going to have to kind of peek in there and show me. These are pretty tight. But those are two 48-volt batteries. Now this is the system that Bluetti recommends. You can buy this entire system for $4,949. So $49.49 is what they have it listed on their website as of the recording of this video. Now, that does not include the solar panels. Okay, the solar panels I installed myself. I bought them off of Amazon. We'll put the links down below. Those are Renogy solar panels. If you're curious, you do not have to put regular solar panels on your roof. If you just don't want to do it, if you don't have the confidence in that, or you don't want to drill holes in your roof and all that good stuff, Bluetti does sell solar panels that you could actually put out. They're flexible solar panels. They're kind of like, some people call them suitcase solar panels. You just unfold them and then fold them back up when you're ready to move. You would just run the cable, you plug it straight into here, go through this hole, set it up in your yard, and you're ready to go. And that way you have sort of a pop-up system for off-gridding. And a lot of people do that. It works just great. And it's not such a commitment to put solar panels on your roof. So if that's what's keeping you from going off-grid, don't let it stop you. They've got a really nice solar package that you can also buy in addition to the RV5. Now, you may be wondering why we went ahead and installed the solar panels on the roof. Well, we live full-time in our RV. and we move fairly often, so we really didn't like the idea of going and setting up solar panels all the time, tearing them down. It was just more work, frankly, but we move all the time. If you're not a full-timer, or you just don't camp all that much and you don't mind the idea of setting up some solar panels now and then, it would be perfect for you. But just for us, it just sounded like more work. So I went ahead and put the work in to install the solar panels. And yeah, it was a lot of work, but totally worth it. Okay, so here I am behind the RV5 in the panel back here. I'm on top of the batteries, and in front of me is the E panel. I've got the door open, so essentially this is like a breaker box. It is a breaker box. So here's all the breakers on this side, and then it actually has all the fuses on this side. Now, I decided not to do the fuses for reasons that I'll explain once I'm out of this little tiny compartment, but I just kind of wanted to show you what it's all about. I have the RV's breaker box up here, and so for all of like the AC things like air conditioners, microwaves, heaters, all that kind of stuff, I actually undid the breakers here and I ran them into this breaker box instead. Now, I had the option of taking all the 12-volt stuff and disconnecting it and installing it here, but I decided not to do that for reasons that I'll explain in just a minute. Okay, so the reason we didn't move all the 12-volt stuff is because it was all hooked up anyway. So we have a 400-watt solar panel on the roof that was installed by Alliance, and there's a solar charge controller already in here, and we had already installed this 280 amp hour lithium battery from Rododo that we love, so we didn't see the reason to undo all that. Let's talk about the installation. For one thing, I want to be clear that Bluetti did send us the RV5 system for free in exchange for this review, okay? Just to be totally honest about that. So I'm going to give you the pros and the cons. One of the cons is the installation, at least in a fifth wheel. So in their marketing, they talk about being like a 1-hour install. No, not in a fifth wheel, it's not. Now, if you had an absolutely perfect scenario which you knew where everything was and you know exactly what to do, you had all the perfect tools, and you had like a little small bee camper or something, and you want it with a panel that you could just easily replace the fuses and all that kind of stuff, it may take you an hour if you knew exactly what you were doing. With this, it took me, frankly, a few days. But that has, as you can see, I had to put the batteries back in the compartment. I was dealing with a lot of small spaces. There were also a number of tools that I ended up having to buy that I didn't know that I needed. I ended up having to wait to come from Amazon, all that good stuff. So it's definitely a more involved installation. I would say, certainly if you have a helper, if that helper knows what they're doing, it would even go quicker. But even if you just had somebody to help you just move stuff and do some of the work, it would obviously go quicker. But grand scheme of things, I still think it's worth it, even if it does take you a few days to install it, to do things right. So I have no electrical experience. Okay, so there were a few things that I needed to do with this install that required me to learn. Now, the great thing that I will say about the Bluetti versus another Victron setup and all that kind of stuff is they provide you with most of the cables. Okay, so a lot of the red and the black cabling and even the green and stuff that you see, those are all provided for you. They're even labeled. You plug it in this hole, plug it in this hole. You know, I mean, it's very clear. There's some things that they don't provide. So like the grounding cables, I learned a lot about grounding, and I had to make sure that I got the right gauge, just crimping, all those kinds of things. So there are a number of things that you're going to have to do, like to connect the two large batteries together. I needed a small jumper. I had to create those cables myself. But all in all, compared again to a larger Victron installation, this is a cakewalk. Bluetti definitely means for you to install this yourself, and they give you a lot of tools to do that. They give you like these installation guides. One thing that I think it is important to point out is that you may wonder why I installed that in that particular compartment is because I had a clear, like little less than 8 inches all the way around. That is one thing that they certainly recommend for the airflow and circulation. So you don't want to put it into a super tight space. So definitely one thing to keep in mind, but then you can easily take this and you can go around and make sure you've got the right spot. Another trick that I did that worked fabulously well for me is I took all these documents. You can get PDFs of these documents off of their website. I actually uploaded these to ChatGPT as a project, and I used ChatGPT, the AI, to answer tons of questions based directly on the manuals, and that saved me so much time and frustration. It was unbelievable. So they do give you a lot of tools to be able to, you know, install it and make it right. So a lot of you may be wondering about the whole 48 volt battery thing instead of 12 volt. We're typically kind of trained in the RV world to think in terms of 12 volt batteries. But a 48 volt system is kind of what the more advanced boondockers or off-grid type living people, they tend to use the 48 volt because it's more efficient. So an analogy that I learned from ChatGPT was, if you could imagine, like a 12 volt battery would be like if you had a garden hose and you had a certain size garden and you had the same amount of water. A 12 volt battery would be like using the same amount of water through a gigantic hose that only went very slowly. And then a 48 volt battery would be like a normal size hose that moved very quickly with the same amount of water. Which would you want to use? You would want to use the smaller hose that's going to be able to help you spray and get it done a lot faster, right? So the 48 volt works a lot more efficiently, and it doesn't have to use these really large cables. Okay, about the battery capacity. Again, when you come to 12 volt batteries, we tend to think in terms of amp hours, right? When I had my other system, I thought, well, I have 800 amp hours of batteries. That was plenty. Well, with the 48 volt, when you do the measurements, it's just a little bit different. So I had to ask about this, but it said each 48 volt battery contains about 4.8 kilowatt hours, about 400 amp hours at 12 volt equivalent. So essentially 2 of those large batteries like I had that are the 48 volt are almost equivalent to what I had in my other RV with the 800 amp hours. Okay, so let's talk about the big question that everybody always has when it comes to these solar setups like this is, can you run your air conditioners? And the answer is yes, but I'm gonna actually show you something by demonstration that you may not even catch. So I'm gonna set this to cool, put it on high, and you'll see that it starts. And now we're using 1100 watts total. You can click this little thing, you can get the usage, and you can see that we're not plugged into shore power, okay? So that we only have basically coming off the roof with the solar, and then this represents the battery pack. So, you know, it's obviously it's draining the battery pretty quickly. Now, but here's the other big thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn on the other one. You'll see it double. Yeah, so now we're up to 2100. And it's really starting to burn up a lot of our battery power. But here's the big thing that I wanted to point out to you. Neither one of these air conditioners have soft starts on them. So that's a big deal, because with our Victron system, we needed to install soft starts on all 3 of our air conditioners in order to be able to use them. In fact, the first thing that happened when our solar install guy left, the first thing I did was what I did just now, and I didn't have the soft start installed, and sure enough, the inverter shut down. So the RV5 has the capacity to be able to start an air conditioner without having soft starts. Those soft starts cost $300 a piece. So 3 air conditioners, $900 that the RV5 you don't need to spend. Pretty cool. Let's stay on the RV air conditioner topic for just a second. Okay, so we are big boondockers. If you don't know that about us, if you look back on our channel, you could see tons of boondocking episodes. We love to go boondocking. And we feel like the best way to go boondocking is to go out west where there's no humidity, and during the day it's typically around 70 degrees, and then at night it cools down to around the 40s. In that scenario, frankly, you don't need air conditioners. You really don't. You can just leave your windows open and it feels great. But if you're one of these folks that really feels like you need to boondock with air conditioners, what I would say is don't spend a ton of money on getting a new power station set up, a big Victron system that's going to cost you $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, or even an RV5 system that's going to cost you, maybe you get more batteries and all that. Just get better air conditioners. Air conditioning technology is improving. And so coming up on our channel, we're going to test some new technology with inverter air conditioners, which use about half the power, 12 volt air conditioners, which also use about half the power. They're super efficient, and they just don't take as much battery power. So why try to power these, frankly, these old technology air conditioners with new power technology? Does that make sense? So that's coming up. We're definitely going to be testing that soon because, sure, we'd like to be able to use AC when we sleep. So we're going to see if we can pull that off, but that's on down the road. Okay, so let's talk about the pros and cons of the RV5 versus a traditional setup. One major con, frankly, with this unit is that while I think it is absolutely perfect for 30 amp RVs, it's not perfect for 50 amp RVs, which ours is a 50 amp RV. Now, let me explain. So you may have noticed whenever I showed the E-panel, that was basically a separate breaker box that comes with the RV5 setup. That means you have to unhook the things that are like your microwave and all these breakers from your RV's panel and hook them into the E-panel of the RV5. Now, the problem is there's only 8 of them. There's only 8 breaker spaces, whereas our RV has 12. So I had to pick and choose which things that I wanted to transfer over. Now, it turns out we don't use our washer dryer hookup. We also don't use our dishwasher, and there's some other things I kind of forget that we don't even use. So not a big deal for me to choose the 8. But that means that even when you're hooked up to shore power, you can only power 8 things with AC. So if you did have a dishwasher hookup, or if you did have a washer dryer hookup, you couldn't use them at all. So that's a big problem. There is a way around it that I frankly discovered midway through my installation. I decided to go ahead and go through with the install the way that it was, but now I'm going to have to basically undo it. And that is, I'm going to unhook everything from the E-panel. I'm going to hook it back into the breakers the way that I had it, and I'm going to use a transfer switch. Let me explain. So the transfer switch, I actually already have one in the RV that we really don't use. See, the transfer switch, the technology is meant to be for a generator, an onboard generator. We don't have an onboard generator, okay? And we don't plan on getting one. We have an external generator that we use every now and then. So the idea is that with the transfer switch, it's meant to, when you're plugged into shore power and then all of a sudden you want to use your generator, it just makes sure that it instantly transfers over to the generator and doesn't allow you to use shore power and generator at the same time. Well, since I'm not going to have a generator and I don't plan on using one with an onboard generator, I'm going to basically be able to use that transfer switch and just plug the RV5 into that. So now my transfer switch will see the RV5 as an external generator. It won't know the difference. Basically, it's just a big battery bank as far as it's concerned. And whenever I start using it, it's going to transfer over to it instead of shore power. And it's going to power everything as normal in our regular RV's breaker box. I hope that makes sense. So that's coming up. I wanted to go ahead and make this video as is. You might be wondering, well, why the heck did you just show us that setup with your 50 amp RV if you're just going to unhook it all? Well, that wasn't my plan. You're kind of going through this trial and error with me. Now, you may be wondering, well, hold on. What if I want to use this transfer switch thing, but I do have an onboard generator? That's a technical question that, frankly, I don't know the answer to. I believe that it can be done. I actually did ask AI about it. I think it would involve like a second transfer switch or something like that. Another major limitation with the RV5 is that it runs off of one leg of electricity. Now, if you're not sure what that means, let me explain. So RVs that are 50 amp run off of 2 legs of electricity. RVs that run on 30 amp, like smaller travel trailers and that type of thing, when they're hooked up to shore power, they just hook up to the 30 amp, which is 1 leg of electricity. So what that really means in practical life is that when you are at an RV campground hooked up to regular 50 amp shore power with your big RV, you could run all of your air conditioners at one time, right? If you wanted to, because you have all that headroom. Now, if you went to a state park or something and you had to sized down because they didn't even have 50 amp hookups, all they had was a 30 amp hookup, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? You would end up having to maybe run 2 air conditioners, and as soon as you turn on that third one, it's going to throw the breaker, right? So think of the RV5 when you're off grid, you're going to be in a 30 amp situation. With us, that's totally fine because we have no interest in running 3 air conditioners off of a battery bank. It doesn't make sense. In fact, we probably would never run 2 air conditioners off a battery bank. For some people, that might be kind of a deal killer. And that's one of the cons if you can consider it that. You can actually get your Victron systems big enough because they're modular, right? You can install all sorts of technology. You can have huge battery banks. You could put solar panels all the way across your roof. That's just, to me, it's overkill for myself because I have no interest in running all that much electricity whenever I'm off grid. It's just not that big of a deal to me. So having a 30 amp RV that can run 1 air conditioner, maybe 2, that sounds great to me. So back to the pros and cons. One of the biggest pros of this is that it's an all-in-one design. That's their whole intention of building this. You don't have to buy separate charge controllers, separate cables. Now, but because of that, one of the cons would be, to some people, is that it's not customizable. You know, it's not like I mentioned earlier, like Victron, where you can build these massive systems or you can customize exactly what you need with as far as your solar setup, and you can just keep adding solar panels and add more solar controllers, stuff like that. In fact, that would be one of the potential cons with this, is that the solar input, you have 2 inputs, okay, with the solar, but each one of them is rated at 25 amps. Now, so what that means is that you're going to have to watch how you install them, as far as like you can't run a whole bunch of them in series and hook it in and go way over the amperage, or it's just not going to accept it. So I ended up, like I said, I ended up with 1600 watts on the roof. I ended up doing a 2 series, 2 parallel for those of you out there who know what that means. So works fine for most applications. For people that want to go off grid and stay for, you know, not use tons of air conditioning or not use these big energy hog type of appliances, that is totally fine. Now, if you want to build like a massive schoolie system where you basically just want to live off grid indefinitely and you want to have all the power and then more, this is probably not the system for you. You're probably going to build a Victron system or something like that, and you're going to spend way, way, way more money, because that's really the idea with the RV5 is that it's going to cost, you know, like I mentioned, it's $49.49 is the current price as of this video that you can buy on their website. That gives you everything I've shown. It does not include the solar panels. I did spend around $2,500 on the solar panel setup that I have up there, but it's still around half of what we paid to have the full thing installed. We were about $14,000 to have our full system installed. So I still think it's a bargain price. And plus it's meant to plug and play. You can do this yourself. That could also be considered a con. You're not going to install this most likely in a day. You're going to install it over a period of a couple days, maybe even 3. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's a fair amount of work, but totally worth it in the end, because we are huge proponents of boondocking, mainly because it's camping. It's beautiful. It allows you to go out and experience things that you could frankly never experience at typical campgrounds. The other big thing is, as full-time RVers, we really feel it's necessary. We've been on the road full-time for over 3.5 years, and if that entire time we had to constantly pay for just regular campgrounds, we'd be broke. I mean, so boondocking allows us to basically go out and cut our expenses down to hardly anything and stay at the most gorgeous places. So this minor investment for that trade-off, to me, it's a no-brainer. So one more thing that you might need to know about would be the weight of the batteries. The batteries are around 100 pounds each. Now, I have 2 batteries, it's 200 pounds. That actually comes out to around the same of what I had with my 4 200 amp hour batteries that I had before that were 12 volt. The difference is that obviously, you know, they're a little easier to carry when they're 50 pounds a piece as opposed to 100 pounds, but not a huge deal. And the thing is, when you install 2 100-pound batteries, you're dealing obviously with less cables. Get a helper, put them in there. Bluetti does provide really nice like braces to put them together. Again, that's not something that you get with your typical batteries that you buy off the shelf, or even the Redodo batteries. You're going to have to buy some sort of bracing and put them in there. Bluetti provides all that. Drills down in there. It's a really nice little modular system. So yes, there's a fair amount of weight to those batteries, but actually in the end they're more efficient and it's a much cleaner install. Now the other thing too is you do need to think about the space that you need to go around the actual RV5. You're going to need almost 8 inches around, they say around the whole thing. So make sure, that's why we put it in that particular bay. So we've told you all about the RV5, but we haven't shown you how it performs. Well, the fact is, because we really haven't used it yet. So the good news is we are going to be staying at numerous Harvest Host locations coming up very soon, and we're going to be filming our experience. That means that we're going to be completely unhooked. We're going to see how we can run our TV and our air conditioner and our microwave and our air fryer and all that good stuff, our computers, and just live life. Because again, we're full-time RVers and we want to see how this baby performs, and we're going to take you along with us. So if you haven't subscribed, please do that now. Just go click that subscribe button, and we really want to thank you for watching this video. If you have questions about the RV5, I'll do my best to answer them. Just leave your comments down below, and we will see you in the next video.